Well, thank you. Hello, everybody. Tonight, I want to go over the basics of the high performance leadership and answer any questions that you have. It's something that I believe in strongly. I have done 2 high performance leadership projects already, and I'm working on a 3rd one. And I'll tell you all about the project and how it works and some helpful tips that will hopefully make it easier for you to follow and understand. So first, let's talk about what is the HPL. The High Performance Leadership Project or program consists of 5 projects that all focus on one goal. And it's designed to offer instruction and practice in leadership areas such as developing a vision, setting goals for yourself, and then planning how you'll reach those goals, developing specific plans and strategies, and also team building. It also gives you the opportunity to get feedback from other people about your leadership skills. And so it's a really good program to get involved with, even if you're not planning to try to get a DTM. Even if you just do the High Performance Leadership Project as a side effort, it's a good process to go through, and I'll explain why as we go along. It's also required, though, for the Advanced Leader Silver Award. So if you're working toward your DTM, the 2 things that you will need in addition to the awards that precede the Advanced Leader Silver, the Competent Leader and the Advanced Leader Bronze, you'll also need to complete a high performance leadership project and serve 1 term as a district officer to get your Advanced Leader Silver. So if you're interested in going for your DTM, you have to do a high performance leadership project. And just as a side note, it's also referred to as a Leadership Excellence Award. It's a little confusing sometimes when you go back and look at your awards in your profile online and it says LDREXC and you're wondering what that is. It's just Leader Excellence Award, which is the completion of your high performance leadership project. Now, where do you start? First, you have to order your materials online. A lot of times what happens with the high performance leadership is that people decide on a project and all of a sudden they'll start working on that project, but they don't actually go through the process. So the first thing you need to do before you start working on your project is to order the materials from online. And as of right now, it's $14 for the High Performance Leadership Manual, and that also includes 3 guidance team manuals. So 3 manuals for the people on your guidance team to use. And 3 is actually a good number. We'll talk more about the guidance team in a little bit, but 3 is a good number for your guidance team, if not more. I actually have some extra guidance team manuals. So if anybody ever needs any, you're welcome to holler at me and I'll pass along any that I have left because I had ordered extras for one of my previous projects. It's the next thing that you want to do is start in that manual with how to use this program. Don't skip over that. A lot of people skip that page because it starts with project 1 on the next page, but you really want to read the part that says how to use this program. I am a rule follower, and so when I was in school, in elementary school and in high school, I followed whatever guidelines the teacher told me. If we were working on spelling words and she said write the spelling words each 10 times, I would write them 10 times, regardless of whether I knew them or not. I would do whatever the teacher told me to do. And some of my classmates thought I was crazy for doing that. But it was a process that she had designed in order for us to be successful in the program or in that particular class. And I did that for all my classes. And not so surprisingly, I was an A student. I always got A's. And I truly believe it's because I followed the process that the teacher provided. It's the same way with Toastmasters. If you're going to go through a manual and you're not going to read the project and actually do it the way it's intended to be done, you're not going to get out of it what's intended for you to get from the program. And then you want to recruit a guidance committee. When I was planning for this event, I was thinking about saying maybe you should consider having people who have done an HPL before, or maybe you should consider having guidance team members that are DTMs. And then I decided that that probably wasn't necessarily a good piece of advice, because I've had people on my guidance committee in the past that were brand new Toastmasters, and they really brought some good things to my HPL. And I'll share with you when we talk about what types of projects you can do as an HPL, I'll share with you my projects that I've done already and one that I'm working on, and how my team members fit in, how my guidance committee helped, but also how my action team members helped with that. And then you want to start thinking too about what your possible goal is. And that's basically, what is your project idea? So as I mentioned in the first slide, what you're doing is you're working on 5 separate projects, but they all are working toward one goal. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through an overview of those 5 projects so that you can understand how it works. This is all straight out of the High Performance Leadership Manual that you see pictured on the screen. And it goes into great detail, but I'll give you like a high-level overview of it so that you can better understand how it works. And I will get into some of the nitty-gritty of the specifics of how we can tweak it. The part 1 in the leadership manual, or the first project, is learning about leadership. And it actually does a really good job of giving you a leadership overview. Some of you probably know that I'm certified through the John Maxwell team, and so I do a lot of leadership training. And I've gone through this manual twice. I'm going through it a 3rd time, and it really is very well written, and the guidance is really well provided and laid out for you, exactly telling you exactly what leadership is all about. It talks about why leadership is needed today, why leading is serving in a way. It talks about how leaders and managers are different and how they're alike, what the formal authority is and what earned authority is. And it takes you through the 6 dimensions of leadership. And those 6 dimensions are vision and values, direction, persuasion, support, development, and appreciation. And it talks about all of these things, all of these dimensions, and how they apply to you working as a leader with a team of people supporting you. These things are what help you do a good job as a leader when you're working with a team. And then it gives you some ideas for becoming an effective leader. Really good stuff, concrete ideas that you can put into action in the process of doing your high performance leadership. There's a self-assessment at the end of part 1 where you actually assess yourself on different leadership characteristics. I found that really interesting because I have read the book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, probably 20 times, and I've often tried to assess my own leadership skills just basing them on those 21 laws. And this book does a really good job of assessing your leadership and then showing how the different areas of leadership impact those 6 dimensions of service leadership. So that's a really interesting piece of it. There's even a graph where you graph out your scores and it gives you a picture of what your leadership assessment results look like. And it's the initial assessment. You'll come back and reassess your leadership characteristics later on in a later project, and we'll talk about that then. And then this is where you start deciding what your project ideas are. And so let's talk about choosing a project idea for a minute before we move on. The goals that you have to shoot for when you're trying to decide what you're going to do for your high performance leadership, you want to think of something that is going to have a measurable outcome that you can achieve, that you know you can achieve. It's going to be a SMART goal, if you're familiar with SMART, the SMART goal process. So you want it to be measurable and achievable. You want it to fit within a certain time frame, and you want to make sure that you have all of the information that you need, that you'd be able to actually do it. You want to be realistic about it. You don't want to pick something that's impossible to do. Now, this is a real important thing to consider. Your high performance leadership project in Toastmasters does not have to be successful in order for you to get credit for it. My very first project that I chose was the chartering of Chalmette Toastmasters in St. Bernard Parish. And a lot of people said, that's not a high performance leadership program, starting a club. But the way I did it was it took me 3 years to get the club chartered because it had been existing before Katrina. And then when we tried to bring it back after Katrina, we just had problems getting the word out, and the parish was slow to come back into shape. And so it was a really difficult process. And so the high performance leadership process, what I did with that was I actually took notes of everything we were doing, and I documented the whole process. And so part of my high performance leadership was not just trying to get the club chartered, but it was documenting all the lessons we learned along the way, actually interviewing people in the parish and talking to them about things we could do differently. And I had a team of people working with me trying to get that club started. They were my action team. I had people from the district that had chartered clubs in the past advising me. And so that was my whole process I went through for that HPL. So you want to make sure it's something that's achievable, but if you aren't able to get it done, that was one of the problems I had, was that I gave myself a deadline and I missed my deadline. I didn't get the club chartered by the deadline. It wound up chartering about a month later. So it eventually came to fruition, but it was slow. And so I just want to remind you, you don't have to be successful, but your goal is certainly to try to be successful, but don't think that you'll lose credit if you're not. And then you want to try to pick something where you can recruit volunteers to work with you. If you can get a lot of people to help you, then that puts you in a position of being a leader to those people, and you actually get that valuable experience of leading a team. So keep those things in mind when you're choosing a specific project. Some things that are suggested, I did a little search online, and some of the things that were suggested were an event that you have to plan, maybe to chair a district conference or to chair a regional conference or some other event for the district, but it doesn't have to be a Toastmasters event. We had someone that I served on a guidance committee for just recently that actually was the chairperson of an event at their church. And I watched her go through the whole HPL process, and she was very diligent about following the manual and doing everything it said. And I was just really impressed with how she was able to apply the project guidelines to this church project. It was really wonderful, and it worked out beautifully. Another thing you can do is put together some type of expo or training session. You can put together a whole training program or a lecture series, start a new group or an activity, start a new club at your school. That's something that would be good for college students. Put on a community function or play, organize a family reunion. There are lots of things that you can do. I told you earlier that I would share with you my projects. I've already told you about the one to charter Chalmette Toastmasters and document that whole process. I also did an HPL on my business plan. When I first became a John Maxwell team member, I had to write a business plan and do 3 mastermind groups. And so my goal was to do a mastermind group in all 3 parishes, Jefferson Parish, St. Bernard Parish, and Orleans Parish. And so that's what I did. And I told all my guidance committee members that if they wanted to be on my guidance committee, they had to join one of my masterminds. So that ensured that I would have at least one person in the mastermind group. But it went really well. And what I did was I had them give me feedback. But then I also had team members that helped me with marketing They helped me with photocopying and setting up my training. They reviewed my documents, and they also critiqued me as I was going through the mastermind groups. It was 7-week masterminds, 3 of them, and I did all 3 of them at separate times and let the group follow those and share feedback with me along the way. And I kept readjusting and coordinating with them the whole time. Now, that gives you some ideas of what you can do for a project. The second part of the high performance leadership, part 2, or the second project, is to choose your objective. And your objective is actually your project idea. You're going to start by forming a vision. So if you decide that you're going to do you're going to chair a conference for District 68. Of course, you would have to coordinate that with the district leaders, but that's just an example. If you decided that that was what you wanted your high performance leadership project to be, that would be your objective, to successfully chair this conference. You would begin forming a vision related to that project. And here's the thing. A lot of times we can think of a vision, and I've watched, my husband is working on his HPL right now, and I watched him struggle so hard with trying to put his vision on paper and then taking that vision and turning it into a mission. It's interesting because you think it's real clear cut, you know what you want to do, and you have to go from forming this vision to turning the vision into a mission. But if you read the guidelines that are in the book, in part 2 of the book, it is really helpful in walking you through that whole process. And this goes back to what I said initially. If you just try to flake through this and skip sections and just fill in the blanks here and there, you will not get the benefit from it, and your project won't be as successful. The next thing that this section helps you with is defining the core values. So we have our core values for Toastmasters: integrity, respect, service, and excellence. But you may have some specific core values that relate to the project. And you'll list those. It walks you through the process of trying to determine what those are and how to list them. And then actually verbalizing what your vision and your mission is. I mentioned a minute ago that AJ struggled with that. He really had a hard time coming up with a vision statement and a mission for his project. And by the time he went through the whole process, he figured it out. Then you have to share your vision. So one thing I failed to mention is your guidance committee is going to meet with you after each project, and you're going to share with them what you've learned. So for example, in part 1, you're going to share with your guidance committee what your results were of that self-assessment you did. You're going to talk to them about your ideas about your project, and they're going to help you by giving you feedback and guidance. They may say, oh, that's a terrible idea. They're there to give you support, but also to help guide you in the right direction. When you choose your guidance committee members, you want to consider whether or not they'll be helpful to you in the process. So when I chose my guidance committee members, when I did my HPL of my business plan and launching my business, I picked people that I knew had been to similar classes and could guide me in the right direction. They'd been through masterminds, they understood what a mastermind was, they knew about leadership, and they could walk me through the process. One thing I didn't mention before, and I'll tell you now, is that your guidance committee members get credit for serving on your team. In the Competent Leader Manual, there is a mentoring project that all Toastmasters have to complete in order to get a Competent Leader Award. And that mentorship can be serving on somebody's high performance leadership team. And if you do that, then you can get that credit for that. So just make sure you choose your team members wisely. Don't just pick random people that happen to be available. Try to choose people that will really give you good guidance. Part 3. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to back up for a second. When you're sharing your vision, you're going to do that in a speech, a 5 to 7 minute speech at your club. So basically, when you finish project 2, you're going to meet with your committee, your guidance committee, and share with them your vision and your mission and your core values. And then you're going to formulate a speech, and you're going to present that speech to your club. And that'll be the first speech of 2 that you give during the High Performance Leadership Project. Part 3, the third project in the High Performance Leadership, is the winning commitment to your objective part. This is where you're going to share what your vision is with other people and get them to commit to help you. You're going to form an action team. So I mentioned earlier that when I was doing my business launch, my action team consisted of people who helped me market, who reviewed my press releases. I had people that edited things for me. I had about 8 people on my action team. I had 4 guidance committee members. Some of them overlapped. A couple of the people that were on my guidance committee were also on my action team. And I've seen that work well. Just be careful you don't overwork people or cause a conflict of interest with that. If you have an action team that's completely made up of your high performance leadership guidance committee, then it's going to be a little awkward to talk about problems you encountered if it involved those people on your action team. So just be careful about that. It's one thing I'll caution you on. This is also when you start creating an action strategy. When I say to you, this manual takes you through this step by step, it really does. It gives you charts to fill out, it gives you planning guides, and it walks you through the whole process of creating that strategy step by step. And that is why it's so important to stick to the manual and actually read it and follow the instructions provided. Then you put the action plan into development. You actually write out the steps, set goals for yourself, set milestones, and you work toward that. You also have to decide on who's going to do what timetable you need to complete things on. Those are all important. Then again, you will meet with your guidance committee after you complete that portion of it and present what you've developed to them. Now, project number 4 is working the plan. So once you have your whole plan developed, then you're going to start actually working your plan. And part of that is going to be supporting your team. When you have people working with you as the action team, this goes back to those leadership values that we talked about in the beginning. It's all the things that you need to know, the direction, persuasion, support, all the service leadership vision and values that you need to make sure you keep in play when you're working with other people on your team. You need to support them the whole time and treat them the way you should as a leader. You also want to be continually reviewing your progress and making sure you're staying on track, because you may have to adjust as needed. And then you're going to deal with some obstacles. The person that I just helped with we were just serving on the guidance committee for, she ran into some pretty big obstacles while she was planning her church event, but she handled them very well. I was really impressed with that. And it was interesting, she was almost apologizing to us, her guidance committee, when she was sharing the obstacles that she ran into or things that she felt she hadn't done as well as she should have. And I reminded her that that's the whole point of the project, because you're in the process of developing your leadership skills. You're not supposed to go into this process as a perfect born leader. You're supposed to develop your leadership skills as you go through the project. So I thought that was kind of interesting. She was embarrassed or apologizing for the struggles she had, when that's the whole point. You want to go through these difficulties because that's how you learn. I was watching a TV show today where the dad was trying to protect the little boy from everything. And if you don't let your kids go through difficult times, they don't know how to deal with difficulties when they encounter them. It's the same thing with this. When you're going through this project, if you encounter obstacles and difficult people, then you learn how to deal with difficult people and obstacles that come up. So it's part of the process. Sometimes you have to completely redirect. With the Shellmet Toastmasters thing, when I was trying to charter Chalmette Toastmasters, we started out having our meetings at a church in Chalmette, and it seemed like it was going well, and then all of a sudden we kept losing people, and we weren't replenishing those people. We could never get to 20 to charter. And I finally found out from some people after talking to them around the parish that this particular church had a reputation that was somewhat negative in the community because of something that had happened in the past. And so people were hesitant to walk through the doors. So we immediately moved our location for Chalmette Toastmasters to a more neutral ground. And when we did, we were able to charter within a few months of moving it. So that's the redirection we needed right there. We also changed the time and day of our meeting from a Saturday morning to a Tuesday night. Something else that we got feedback on, and we addressed that feedback. So that's part of the process. You get feedback as you go, you listen to that feedback, and then you adapt as needed. The thing about the guidance committee and the action team that you have working with you, those two different teams are going to give you completely different advice. I don't mean conflicting advice, but I mean they will share different types of advice with you. So it's important to listen to what they have to say and redirect as needed. And then at the end of part 4, this is where I mentioned you will go back and you will reevaluate your leadership skills. You'll basically do that whole self-assessment over again to see where you are now that you're all the way on the last project. You'll be moving into the last project. And it gives you an idea of what benefit you got from working the HPL process. I thought it was really interesting because I didn't think, the first time I did the HPL, I didn't think I was going to see a difference between my initial scores and my later scores, and I saw a huge difference in a couple of areas, which was surprising to me, but I did learn a lot from going through the process. So again, it's very important to work the project the way it's supposed to be worked and actually read everything and follow the directions. The last project in the HPL is all about analyzing and presenting your results. So in this part of it, this is where you're going to look and see how successful you are. You're going to actually review your results. So you held this big event. How did it go? Did a lot of people show up? Did you market it well? Did someone on your team fail miserably? Did somebody forget to do something they were supposed to do? You're reviewing all those results. What went well? What didn't go well? And then you're also presenting your results to your club. This is your second speech in the HPL. It's a 5 to 7 minute speech. You present your results to your club. You might have to give them a refresher of what your project was all about. Tell them how everything worked out and what your ultimate results were, and also what you learned from it. And then you're going to submit your application to World Headquarters for your Leadership Excellence Award. When you submit your application, it's just like any other manual. There is an award application in the back of the manual. It's a couple of pages long. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong manual, but it's you have a sheet that has a place for all of your members of your guidance committee to sign. At least it has 4 places. So if you have more than 4 people on your guidance committee, you could always attach another sheet if you wanted to make sure they get credit for serving. But all of your guidance committee members have to fill in their name and address and phone number and sign stating that they were on your team and can confirm your efforts for certification of the program. In addition to that, you have to include your evaluation of your speech to the club, of your closing speech to the club. So that speech that you just presented to your club, where you shared your results, is going to be evaluated by a speech evaluator at the meeting, and you're going to attach a copy of that to your application. You can scan it and send it to Toastmasters, or you can fax these documents to Toastmasters or physically mail them. Email seems to work the best for everybody, but just make sure you have all of the signatures you need. And if you can't actually be in the room with these people and get them to sign one copy, Toastmasters is really good about accepting 4 different copies with 1 signature on each copy. As long as they have all the signatures, they're okay with it. And once you do all that, you are going to, before you do your final speech to the club, you're going to meet with your guidance committee one last time to share with them what your results were. And as I mentioned earlier, you'll do that at the every project. After all 5 projects, you'll meet with your guidance committee. So you'll be meeting with them 5 times. And however often you meet with your action team is up to you. Those are the people that are actually working with you to help the event, help get the event done, or help your project actually happen. This is these are the points to remember. They're very important. Again, I can't say this enough. You need to work the program. Don't try to circumvent it. Don't try to jump through it quickly. Work it the way it's intended. If you already have an idea for your high performance leadership project and you've already started working on it and you don't have the manuals, order the manuals now and back up and start from the beginning. Just put a halt on it until you can catch up to where you are in the project and be in the same place in the manual. You really seriously need to do that in order to get the benefits from the program. Also, you need to be honest with yourself. If you're not cutting it in a certain area of leadership, you need to be honest with yourself and look for ways to improve that. Sometimes it's hard to admit. We all think we're great leaders, and then you go through something like this, and if you're not willing to look at yourself honestly and say, where am I falling short, then there won't be any room for you to improve, or at least you won't see the room for improvement. This is something that I added in. You're going to get feedback from your guidance team, but you don't always automatically get feedback from your action team, so you need to ask them for that feedback. Typically, when you are running a team, you're a team leader and you're running the team looks at you as the higher up, and so they don't think to give you advice. So, or feedback for that matter. So it's a good idea to consistently talk to your team members and say, how am I doing? What can I do better? How can I help you do your job? So if you have somebody on your team that's doing your public relations, ask them, what can I do to make your job easier? How am I doing as a leader? Because you're leading them. These are the best people for you to get feedback about your leadership skills from, because you're actually leading them through this project. Whereas your guidance committee is giving you guidance and advice, looking at it from an outside perspective. But if you ask your action team for feedback, you will get a completely different type of feedback from them. You will get subordinate feedback from them. They are serving on your team, and they can tell you honestly what type of leader you are. And then my last piece of advice to you is do another project. Not everybody has to be on the TINA train and doing 3 DTMs, but I can't stress enough the value of the HPL. I think it's a great program, and I'm continuously trying to develop my leadership skills, and Toastmasters has just done amazing things for me as far as not what I expected. When I joined Toastmasters to improve my speaking skills. I wanted to polish my presentations and to give up the filler words, and obviously I'm still working on that. I gave up the ums and replaced them with ands, but I am in awe of what Toastmasters has done for me as a leader. I could not imagine having learned as much as I have about leadership anywhere else. Putting into action what we do in Toastmasters, serving as a club leader or as a district leader, and doing these programs like the high performance leadership are the best way to develop your leadership skills. And I can tell you that this 3rd project that I'm working on, it's such a piece of cake compared to the first one. So I know I've learned a lot from the whole process, but I can honestly say that each time I have worked through the manual the way it's supposed to. And so I just encourage you to do that. When you're finished one project and you're working on another, you may be working on something that you have to work on. Your pastor just asked you to chair Vacation Bible School for the summer. Why not make it a high performance leadership project? If you're already doing the work, make it a high performance leadership project. The people at your church can be on your action team, and recruit some Toastmasters to be your guidance committee. And if you're lucky, you can recruit Toastmasters who have done a similar project. That's a good idea. But if you're doing some type of project where you're in a leadership position, I would encourage you to purchase another book or get your old book out and make notes on the side. Turn it into a high performance leadership project, because you will walk through those steps and discover that it's the best way to get to the goal that you wanted to complete. And so I can't encourage you enough to do that and to follow the guidelines, and I promise you it'll be well worth it in the end. And that's my show. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Is there a minimum amount of guidance members?
I don't believe there's a minimum, but they do suggest that 3 would probably be the least amount you'd want to have. 3 is a good number. I have not, on all of my projects, well, I actually haven't specifically picked people yet on my latest one, because I just started working on it. But on my first 2, I had 4 on my first one, and I had 5 on my second one.
And your aim or your objective is to have this completed within a year of being a leader?
No, not necessarily. It just depends on you. My first high performance leadership project, when I did the chartering of Chalmette, I actually had started with a completely different project that was suggested to me by the district director at that time. And to be honest with you, I felt like it didn't have enough substance to it, the project that I was working on, to really put the plan into place. I couldn't really work the HPL manual with that particular project. There wasn't enough to it. And my husband went through the same thing, because he was going to do the, last year when he served as the representative or committee chair for the disaster recovery, he started out with a bang, and we got a lot of people to support him, and he found out who all flooded, and we worked on the website together, and we did a lot of things, but then it fizzled out, and he didn't feel like he had done any substantial work, and so he shifted gears and totally went with something different. But so it's whatever you pick. I have seen people go through an HPL in a month or 2 months, where I worked on the chartering of Chalmette for a year before I even decided that that was going to be my HPL. And then when I decided it was going to be my HPL, I wasn't convinced it was the right kind of project, because I knew people were chartering clubs all the time, but this particular chartering seemed to be an issue. So I went to Phil Verona, or Brian Jolly, I think, was the district director, and said, how can I make this a worthwhile project? And he said, what if you document all the lessons you're learning from this whole process? And so Jeff Harris and Brian gave me some guidance on that. They ended up being on my guidance committee ultimately. And that whole thing took me probably a year and a half from the point that it was probably a year and a half into chartering that I started the actual documentation, and then another year and a half to finish it up. Yeah, it was about 2.5 years total. But it just depends on the project you pick. The young lady that just finished her project, that was her church event, she's been working on that for 6 months, and she didn't think about applying her HPL to it until about 3 months ago. And she sort of had to backtrack and catch up, but she was very diligent about going through the process and looking back at what she had done. And so I think you can, it just depends on the project. So I'm sorry, I kind of derailed that question, but yeah, it just depends on the project.
So what were your and her roles with Toastmasters at the time?
I'm not sure what you mean. In
You,
when
were
I
you
did
all host?
Oh, okay, I follow you. So when I did my first high performance leadership project, the chartering of Chalmette, I started out as an area director, and Dave Reed was our director at the time, and he was just encouraging us all to try to charter a club. And then I was a division director after that, and then that next year I was nothing. So when I wasn't a district leader, I was a club leader. So when I filed my application for my HPL, I wasn't serving in any district role. And at the time, I think I was an advanced communicator silver, advanced leader bronze. And then my second one, I was already a DTM, and I knew I had to do my business plan, and I thought, well, this would be a great thing to use as an HPL project if I want to work on a second DTM. And so I wasn't in district leadership at the time. My husband was. I wasn't. But it was just, you know, you don't have to be in any particular position. You don't have to have any specific educational level yet. And that's why I said at the beginning, I don't know if you heard that part, but I was hesitant, you know, at first I thought, well, maybe you should have all DTMs on your team. I was trying to think if I should recommend that to you guys. And then I thought, no, that's not fair, because on my second HPL, I actually had people on my team that they weren't new to Toastmasters, but they hadn't achieved very much education-wise in Toastmasters. I think one of the ladies had a CC, but she didn't have a CL. Another one wasn't even finished her CC yet. But they were people who had been to mastermind groups like I was going to be trying, and they also were familiar with leadership classes and things like that. So I chose them based on that and not based on their educational level. And as far as your own, you can be at any educational level and in serving in any role.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
I have a question. I am at our church revamping our women's ministry team. Would that qualify for high performance leadership?
Are you going to be in a leadership position over that?
I am the leader over it.
Well, there you go. Yeah, absolutely. So are there people in the church that are going to be supporting the effort, and so you'll be leading a team?
Yes, starting with the pastor.
That's a perfect opportunity then. Perfect. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
And then what you can do, I'm sorry, who am I talking to?
This is Shirley Birch.
Hey, yeah, you know what I would do? I would try to recruit people that have done those types of things at other churches, if you can, to be in your guidance committee. And what you can do is, if you want, you can go into the District 68 group on Facebook and just post a little note, say, this is what I'm working on for my high performance leadership, and I'm looking for HPL guidance committee members that have done something similar. And you might be able to recruit some people.
Okay.
And one thing I didn't mention on the call is that when you have your meetings with your guidance committee, they do not have to be in person. They can be over the phone. We just did 5 phone calls for this last person that I served on her committee.
Okay, great.
All right, good. Glad to help. That sounds like a good plan too.
Yeah.
And Tina, I just wanted to just throw in too, I know you mentioned just briefly, but you can also do a work project. I'm actually looking at 2 things. Part of my HPL right now is this webinar Wednesday, but I'm in charge of revamping our orientation at work, and I'm in charge of redoing our intranet site for our IT, and that requires me to have mission and vision. I have people underneath. I have all these different aspects, and as long as I have somebody that's from Toastmasters, which I'll have on my committee, then I can actually use that for my HPL too.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great.
It doesn't just have to be Toastmasters or church or home stuff, you can use things that you've already got at work, projects that you're on at work, as long as you're leading them, you can also use that for your HPL.
Yeah, you just made me realize that I missed an opportunity to do an HPL because I redid my church's website just 2 months ago. Totally redid it, recorded testimonial videos and edited them and everything, and did not even think to make that an HPL because I was already working on another one. But yeah, anything work related. AJ is my husband is a sports official, and when he first started out and he was trying to pick a high performance leadership project, he was thinking about doing training for new umpires. And he had this whole great idea, and he was going to develop the training program and recruit other umpires to train them. And it wound up not working out because they came up with new guidelines and had to go through a specific training that was warranted by the people who actually, I don't want to say booking agents, so I forget what they call them, but the people who actually book the umpires for the games had guidelines that they changed and had set training requirements for that. So, but that was something he thought about, and it might have been an interesting project if he was able to do it. But yeah, anything work-related, church-related, personal. I was trying to think of some more examples that were outside of church or work, but yeah, like the one of the ideas that I saw on the internet, well, actually I saw some projects that people had done in the past, and there was actually one where somebody put together a new Boy Scout troop in an area where there was none, something similar to that. But there's one about running the cookie program for the Girl Scouts, organizing a political rally. Those were just some of the other ones that I had seen out on the different websites. There's a lot of information on the internet too. If you Google high performance leadership project ideas, there's a lot of information out there that I went through originally when I was trying to figure out what I would do, and I also read over some of it again before today. Any other questions? Sounded like somebody was going to say something.
I don't hear anybody. Does anybody else have any other questions? Any other comments, concerns?
No, thank you. I'm fine.
Okay. Anybody
Thank
have
y'all so much
for next week webinar Wednesday?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said, anybody have any suggestions for next week's webinar Wednesday? Something they'd really like to see? All right. Not hearing anything. So, Tina, thank you so much. Did you have anything you needed to follow up with?
No, I think that was it. If anybody has any questions, though, you guys know where to find me. Don't hesitate to reach out and ask. I love this stuff. I am a huge advocate for Toastmasters educational programs, and that's why I'm just so adamant about following them the way they are written. I just truly believe that you don't fix what's not broken, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the pathways is going to be like, but this is what we have now, and it's worked for many years, and I truly believe that it's valuable and you can get the benefit from it if you work it the way it's intended. But thank you for letting me share this tonight.
Yes, thank you. Now, do you know, have they chosen a leader for the spring conference yet? Do we have a chair yet?
My guess is that they probably have, but I don't know that for sure. Annie Spotty would be the one to talk to if anybody's interested in doing something like that. I don't even remember what the location for the conference is. I want to say it's supposed to be in New Orleans.
It is. It's in New
But
Orleans. So for anybody who may be looking for an HPL project, just to let you know, my first HPL project was actually putting on the Baton Rouge District conference way back in the day. And if you're looking for something, it's a great opportunity because it fits everything that you need for your HPL. So contact any somebody if you're interested in being a chair or one of the chairs for the conference.
yeah.
So otherwise than that, it is almost 8:30. Thank you all for attending today's meeting. I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording. And yes.
This is Emily Stitch. Yes, I'm chairing the spring meeting in Kenner at Chick Miller's Church Celebration, so forget it.
Oh, well, you will need other chairs, won't you?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I do need a lot of other chairs. I would welcome the assistance.
So Emily is the official chair, but you could be another chair and get your HPL also.
Yes, indeed.
Congratulations, Emily.
More like condolences.
No. You know what? It's going to be a really great experience for you. It really is. I mean, I know you probably talked to Annie a bunch, but I know she enjoyed it tremendously last year.
Yeah, this will be different, but I do event planning essentially for the Baton Rouge Area Chamber.
There you go. So
as well as my wedding work.
Yes.
Well, you know what? I know we're helping with the planning of the Super TLI, and you guys had coffee all day long, so y'all were my heroes.
Doesn't take much to make you happy, huh?
No, it doesn't.
We'll do it again in the spring, May.
All right, awesome. Thank y'all all so much.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all have a good evening.
Everybody.